I'm so honored. Thank you. My name is Julie Hyman. I am the Director of Policy, Legal, and Government Affairs at an organization called JCAN, which is the Jewish Community Action Network. I joined as a staff person in October of this last year. I have been on the board of the organization since the inception. We are fairly new. We sprung up as a result of what we saw in the aftermath of the war, or in the start, rather, in the aftermath of the start of all this. And we have been trying to tackle local issues that we found, as all of us found, were unguarded as we had focused on national politics before this.
Amazing. And I think the best place to start is, for example, I live in your city, I see something wrong. What do I do?
So I should perhaps, I introduced myself, but I failed to introduce the org. So
Okay.
the short answer is you should call me, but, and so I can set the framework for why that's a potentially useful thing to do. Uh, the purpose of JCAN and the primary thing we do that's different from what was happening before is our day-to-day purpose is to build relationships with local government officials, and it's a fairly mundane thing. Actually, it struck me, now that I'm actually in the nuts and bolts of it, what an easy and accessible to everybody who wants to set up an org like this. It really is very easy to get going, and it's been surprising to me how well we've been able to hook in at least to enough places to be able to make a difference. Obviously, there's a lot of work to do. We're not successful in every instance, but what we've done is we've got a spreadsheet of we operate on a county basis, and I know that every municipality is organized differently, but for our purposes in the United States, we've got counties within which we have cities, within which we have school districts. We have a spreadsheet that lists every public official at every level within each of those jurisdictions, and email addresses, phone numbers, and on a regular basis, whenever we can find a reason to do it, we reach out to them. So for example, new legislation was passed, we sent a fact sheet. Right now, International Holocaust Remembrance Day is coming up. We reached out and asked each city to do something to mark the event, or school districts to incorporate it into their curriculum. And as an initial matter, one doesn't get a response perhaps, but then we do from some handful of officials. Those officials engage, they meet with us, and it starts the ball rolling on a friendly relationship, so that when a problem arises, as an initial matter, our asks are just, please meet with us so you can understand what we're trying to do. And then going forward, when something arises, when a member of our community has an issue come up, they can call us, or there's a contact button on the website, and that is our website up on the screen. So they can reach out. This will help people to identify what local official is relevant for them. But really, the better thing to do is to reach out to us directly, because it's possible either we have a relationship with that official and can reach out to them directly and talk to them about what's going on, or we can reach out to somebody who does have that relationship. And again, we found it's much more effective to be able to reach out behind the scenes than, and often it's, one needs both. You reach out behind the scenes when it is, forgive me, something just popped up on my screen. Separately, the community organizes to do a public-facing response, but people tend to be less defensive and more receptive to perhaps creating solutions when you can approach them in a friendly way and they already kind of know who you are. So just to give an example, and this is a very small example, a local school was standing up a chapter of Students for Justice in Palestine. Are you guys familiar with this? Yeah, okay. I wasn't sure whether that was something that we've been fortunate enough in America to get only, or whether they're operating also on an international basis, but it is what it sounds like. It's pretty pernicious, and the financial ties, I know people are looking into this, and I suspect it could probably be traced back to something very troubling ultimately. But right now we don't have concrete proof of that, just well-founded suspicions. So they're starting up a chapter. The students have a right to do it. And they were going to hold their inaugural meeting on October 7th of this year that just passed, which obviously for the students in that school and for their parents is, you know, appalling. So we reached out to the principal of that school and to the school board and explained why that's a problem for the Jewish community. And actually, they weren't able to stop the club from happening, but the principal did step in and swap out the club had a teacher sponsor who I don't remember if it was a man or a woman, but that the teacher had been indoctrinated and was a pretty pernicious influence. The teacher, him or herself, the principal stepped in, swapped out that person to keep an eye on the club's activities, moved it from October 7th. So its activities wouldn't be quite so troubling, and basically has monitored the situation going forward to make sure that it doesn't create a hostile atmosphere for the Jewish kids on campus. So little things like that, bigger things as I think you've spoken to my dear friend Caroline, who's very much at the helm of these issues. Carol has done an amazing study of the toolkits of our adversaries and has an understanding of what they're doing next and kind of sees 3 moves ahead on the chessboard. So for example, for our city, and I suspect she's spoken to this group about this, she realized that rather than overt BDS, our adversaries are now pursuing something wrapped in a warm and fuzzy blanket of humanitarian issues and social justice, and we're going to impose this type of investment policy and then use that to backdoor BDS into a city. And she flagged it in the city in which I live. Both Carol and I live here in Irvine, and so we brought very public pressure under her leadership, but also because I'm in JCAN, and JCAN covers 30 plus other cities besides Irvine. Where we have relationships with the leadership of other cities, we reached out to the mayors and said, for your information, this is likely coming soon to the theater near you. People, you see this type of policy brought up, there are these pernicious actors likely behind it. Here's how they're trying to push through BDS through the back door, so they're ready for it and they know that it's something that needs to be opposed, even if it sounds warm and fuzzy.
Okay, so basically you're saying from your experience, if I have something to say to the city, I have these 2 avenues. And that's literally a conversation that I had today with people from my own city where I live. And we found an official mural that was illustrated by a professional that does portraits of humanitarians, just like you said. And when you go to their website, you see Greta and you see other people that were on the flotilla in like 10, like huge murals in places everywhere. So one of the flotilla people arrived to our city, and the conversation that we had is, should we go that way or that way? Should we make a big noise and be hostile about it? Or should we go, we have an organization in France that is kind of like yours. Should we go like the backdoor, intimate, like personal way? And you're saying without a doubt that this is better, or you need both.
It tends to start better that way. I would urge making the initial, and it kind of depends on how receptive the city officials are. So it's a little bit context specific, but if you have somebody who's willing to meet with you as a start, I would go that way first and get an understanding from them about what, and also, excuse me, by way of legal background, I know America has various free speech protections that might not be applicable if the type of display that's being contemplated might be contrary to laws against spreading hate. That's something that could be flagged to a public official kind of privately and say, here are our concerns. What do you think? And feel them out. If they're receptive to moving on it, having been contacted that way, great. If not, then there's the second thing to do. And
Thank you.
sometimes they might say, so this was just by way of a case study, and this was a very small thing because she was already kind of receptive and it was in a positive jurisdiction, but it certainly applies equally potentially in a less friendly setting. And I've seen that unfold in Irvine too. You reach out, you establish the relationship, and then the person with whom you have a relationship might tell you, this is going to be brought up at our council meeting on such and such date. I'm going to talk about it. So then she flags it to me. I know to show up in support on that day. I speak about it. And then another person on the council reaches out to me about the same issue. And so you kind of work with each other to, maybe you can coordinate how the public pressure campaign is done. And we've found that to be effective too. Now, one thing that possibly has helped JCAN to be effective is that in addition to the straightforward charitable purpose, which is educating and building relationships and all that warm and fuzzy stuff comes under a straight nonprofit, what's in America called a 501c3 branch. But there's also a political arm, and it's under 501c4 in America. It's also a nonprofit organization, but it's allowed to be politically active. And what I mean by that is it's allowed to endorse political candidates or oppose political candidates in a targeted way. So in the last election cycle, we didn't have that arm, and all we were able to do, it still had some impact, but I think it's going to be stronger going forward. In the last cycle, we just had questions for public officials to answer that were relevant to the Jewish community. How do you feel about this bill, that bill? What's your answer to this question? And then we published everybody's, like on a spreadsheet, what was everybody's answer so that the community could choose for themselves the candidate that would best serve our interests. The feedback we got from that was like, thank you, but that's a lot of reading. So yeah. The people who were going to read that much were likely the people who were informed anyway as to what was going on. So going forward, we actually, now that we've established the C4, we will be publishing, here are the candidates who are good for us, name, name, name. Here are the candidates who are problematic, name, name, name. And that same entity can help to direct funding. Our pockets on a local level are not so deep as they might be at the federal level. But at the same time, local races tend to be not as expensive. So you can make a difference with significantly, and this is crazy. I met with a school board, college board member whom I met through just one of these, reaching out, asking for a coffee with one school board member, and then her saying, you should come to a meeting. We're friendly. Actually, I went to a church-related meeting to meet other friendly people. In that meeting, I met other public officials who then met with me, and I discovered that they were friendly. And one of them really had stood up for the Jewish community even prior to my involvement or anybody's involvement. And he won his race with just $2,000, which I didn't know you could do almost anything with that. So it's good to see that a lot of the time it isn't money that's moving the political needle, it's people's convictions. But we do have that capability, and we are also forming a PAC which can collect money directly and give money directly to candidates. And
what can I do as an advocate in my own city? I'm going to the supermarket, and on the way back, I'm seeing something, and I feel that this is crossing a line. Cannot stay this way, right? So I'm going over to your civic engagement one-on-one page. And so the first thing I could do you want to walk us through, like what are the stages?
Yes, absolutely. And this is connecting with civic leaders. So sending an email or calling, certainly as a private citizen, may work. I have found, as somebody who, before my involvement with JCAN, was sending emails and calling in my private capacity, unfortunately, because civic leaders do get a lot of outreach from individual community members, you may not make as big a dent. So if you lock arms with an organization like yours or like ours, or somebody in the community that represents a community group, it could be a rabbi, by the way, or Jewish Federation, if they're willing. Some federations have been willing to get more engaged on things like this. So locking arms with somebody that can say they represent a group of people, they may find it easier to actually connect with and get a response from a public official. But absolutely sending an email or calling, or sometimes we also, and I'm sure you, well, sometimes it's this group, I think, but we together in the community mount public pressure campaigns, and then we all send emails and call. And that's certainly, in some settings, that's the only way to do it too. But for purposes of civic local politics, I actually, not too long ago, because of my background as a litigator, I was asked, "Are you the attack dog on the team?" And I was like, I mean, I suppose I could be, but one prefers to come at these things in a friendly way, in part because it doesn't burn the bridges. Because unfortunately, whatever problematic thing you've seen, it surely won't be the last problematic thing. So, for example, I put up on the first anniversary of this war, I put up posters of the hostages who were still being held captive. And then, as everybody on this call would expect, they were ripped down. And then I put them back up and they were ripped down. And that's a property crime and a hate crime. So I went and reported it to the police, and I got a very, they were very nice, but they were very skeptical and kind of said to me, well, there's two sides. And it was very disappointing to see that from a police department that ought to know better. There really aren't two sides to taking hostages. Come on. And there aren't, I've also seen from groups that purport to be warm and fuzzy and conflict resolution groups tell us that there's two sides to anti-Semitism, which I know what they're trying to say, that there are two sides in the grand scheme of how you divide the land. And, but it's insanity to hear somebody, you would never say there are two sides to Islamophobia, right, in that conversation. But so in the context of that interaction with the police, I complained, etc. But I think the best outlet for my concern, and it's something we're going to be working on going forward, is trying to provide a training to to members of the police department. And we're lucky in this jurisdiction, the chief of the police department is a friend to the community, to provide a training so that people understand that on things like this, there aren't two sides, and anti-Semitism, there aren't two sides, and it's not a free speech issue. So working behind the scenes helps you develop better the relationship so that you can, and ultimately that's the more valuable thing, because unfortunately these issues keep coming and coming, and you can address them more effectively by locking arms together. So that's thing one. Attending meetings. We do it, how to say, the expression is early and often, but showing up to meetings is important, if only because we found that our adversaries show up to meetings in weird ways. I don't know if, have you had occasion to discuss with Carol the way that CARE has been showing up to our city council meetings? And sometimes they don't identify themselves at this point. And at one point they popped up in support of something that was nominally DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it was masquerading as something that was supposed to be uplifting for minority communities. But the people who showed up to speak for it were Karen. We knew that from the ceasefire times. And so there was kind of some laughter because we were like, we see you. But they show up and they make their statements very aggressively. And if in that public forum, the city officials, especially the ones with whom you don't have a relationship, see that those are the only voices that are showing up, that's potentially problematic for us. Excuse me. So we pop up. We try to be there as often as we can with that message.
That is so important. Like, I think before the war, none of us knew how City Hall works, unless Ryan is on the call here and he's a real estate guy, and then maybe he knew. But the rest of us normies, we just didn't know. And it's such a new experience. And you're right, we were introduced to it through this project, that City Hall is actually a place we have to go to and not only get to know the people, but like actually show presence. And what do you think for someone who never went to City Hall? Like, what would be the first? Our conversation today is taking someone from 0 to 1. So we're keeping it very, very basic. If you want to go to City Hall, but you're scared, maybe it's not safe, maybe it's going to be stressful, What are some tips and what's your impression from this experience?
So I'm happy to say lately it's been less stressful than it was at the outset. But not, I would say a few things. The way that the our adversaries operate, it's very intentionally trying to create a stressful environment for us. They kind of come at you and they say offensive things and they're videotaping and they're trying to get a clip to misrepresent on social media and post. I personally find it stressful, and that's saying something because I used to litigate terrorism cases for a living, and that environment was not as hostile as this environment. But it's also, if you come with the understanding that these for lack of a better term, cuckoos, or these bad actors who oftentimes are being paid by bad actors, are going to be a presence there. And you just, my own strategy, the one that I got trained on, and the one that served me well all through this madness, has just been don't react to them at all. And because I've seen people try to engage, you're not going to persuade them of anything. They're not there to be persuaded, and they're not, I mean, they're, if you're in a position to take money from the actors who are paying them to do this, or if you've imbibed the Kool-Aid that's making them do this, there's nothing you can say, that no reason that can persuade them. And only bad can come of an interaction. So just shut them out. Like, think about something entirely different. My my husband actually served in the US military, and when I complained to him about the hostility of the environment, he said, just think about it like he says that he conceptualizes it as going to combat, you're facing the enemy. Just, they're there to try to do harm, but in the city hall setting, there's really not very much that they can do. Like, when we show up to city hall, that's where the police station tends to be. The police are there. From a physical perspective, no harm realistically can come to any of us in that setting. It's more just the unpleasantness of it. But when you realize that that's all it is, something that's going to pass in the space of an hour or however long you're there, after you leave there, if you haven't engaged with them, there's nothing they can do with having filmed you. And so, whatever. On the other hand, you've stood up to them. And actually, I heard something very moving that for me was motivating at a conference. There's this wonderful rabbi, Soloveitchik in New York. He was closing out this conference, and he said, a lot of people are saying it's the end of the golden age of Judaism for us in a lot of these Western countries, where we were so well integrated into the society, we thought. And now we're finding out that actually we weren't as welcome or integrated as we thought we were. And he said that in his view, in much the way that Winston Churchill had exhorted people during the war, that actually this will be our finest hour. Like, this can be the golden age because we have an opportunity to stand up for our people. Like, when we thought things were good, we didn't know that there was something wrong under the surface. And now it's been exposed, and we can do the work to fix it, which is, and I just gave myself goosebumps saying it. But for myself, I think about that with the unpleasantness going into City Hall. Realistically, no harm will come to us. It's just somebody kind of, being potentially trying to be intimidating, or intentionally rather trying to be intimidating. Just shut them out mentally and think about the good that you're doing. And I think that gets one through. And also, if one is, though I suspect I'm talking to an experienced group in this respect, but just in case, for purposes of public speaking, and I do this before court also, as silly as it sounds, preparing ahead of time the remarks that I'm going to make, just in bullet point form, or writing them out, but in some way having an idea of what I'm going to say, and then going and looking at myself in a mirror, giving myself eye contact and saying what I'm planning to say, helps me get over the jitters about what I'm going to say. Just because even though it's my reflection, it feels like I have an audience, and it makes me a little nervous, and that makes it easier to do a public address.
Yeah, and also we do have a open office window weekly where people can come and practice, get training, and
Oh, wow.
yeah, that's part of the project. We haven't spoken, but I would love for you to join us tomorrow and share more of your experience about that. But
That's
okay,
marvelous.
so first of all, we were good kids. We didn't go and burnt the thing down. We just went to the official organization that represent us in the city. if we don't have an organization, maybe we need to create one like you created. Was it very hard? How did you create this organization?
So I was involved, but I wasn't at the helm. Our fearless leader, and she's on the website, Ilana gets the credit for taking the reins and actually pushing this through and making this an organization. Talk, Talking to community leaders, philanthropists who have an understanding, kind of big picture of what's going on, the people who maybe are big into supporting the synagogues, already active in the community, talking to them and saying, look, here's what we're seeing at the city hall levels and at the school boards, and we really need a community umbrella to fight these issues. And and then unfortunately, lawyers ruin everything. We did engage counsel just to make sure that we were, properly getting everything filed with the Internal Revenue Service or whoever the analog is in the relevant jurisdiction, to make sure that everything is properly squared away from a charitable perspective. But it was a fairly straightforward process. It wasn't hard to do. Standing up a charity, I think this is true in the United States, and I suspect it'll be true in other places as well. There are pro bono establishments, or most law firms, big law firms, will have a pro bono practice where they'll be happy to help set up a community charity organization to help give their lawyers practice doing this, and they get brownie points in the community. So it's a win-win.
Amazing, amazing. So just going over the process here, we did the letter, we did a meeting, and then what?
So participate in town halls and community events. And I do this myself too. So everything on this checklist is stuff that we as staff at JCAN are doing as well. And I don't mean to imply that we're a huge staff. We are a handful of people, amplified by our board and volunteers. But showing up to town halls, a lot of public officials will be posting on Instagram or on various web pages, because they being politicians will want to go be out in the community and talk to people. So the other night I went to a meeting, just state of the district, where a particular city council member was presenting on what's going on just in her slice of our city. And then afterwards, because I'm a familiar face from prior community events, I was able to approach her and we had a friendly conversation. And then at the tail end of that, she said, oh, by the way, you had reached out about marking International Holocaust Remembrance Day. What do you think is the best way for us to do that? Do you want it separate? Do you want it as part of? And so we actually had a substantive conversation on the tail end of it. But this was the third community event that I attended where she showed up, and now she knows me. So now we could have like a productive,
That's
substantive
amazing.
conversation.
Yes.
Thank you. And it's the nice thing is it's something that really anybody could do if you just show up multiple times and, be a friendly face, and then they realize that you're there to, to be constructive and friendly, and then they're open to productive dialogue.
That's amazing. You sound so not angry. I love that. Everything
Thank you.
is so
No,
positive. You turn this into like a lovey-dovey, friendly club almost. Like it feels like it's okay to join. I love it. It's so practical.
Yeah, I should say that this presentation isn't to say that personally on my own time I'm not losing my marbles, and I spent a good chunk of since this war started, as I'm sure many of the people on this line, crying at unexpected times or screaming or howling at the moon. And I still do from time to time, but I also have realized that in terms of fixing what's obviously very, very broken, this is the way to do it. It's kind of, I grew up in APAC. It's something that I was doing that for more than a decade. And I know it's catching a lot of hate right now, but I think it's because the model works is why. And again, the bad actors are on the march because we had an unguarded flank, if you will. We didn't realize that academia and these social and other institutions also needed to be guarded in the same way that federal power needed to be guarded. But at that level, we've built relationships over time and guarded them and inoculated people against nonsense. And obviously it needs more work, but it has been effective so far. And so I'm confident that applying a similar model. And it's really what we're trying to do is be a local APAC, applying the relationship building model at a local level. It can't be done overnight. And APAC keeps saying you can't build this on the day you need it. And it's true. Although that is what we're trying to do. And so at least we have it, maybe not today, but tomorrow in some of these places. It eventually you end up moving the needle. So that is why I sound like I do.
No, but that's amazing. That's exactly the medicine we need today. Um, Invite them to your own community events, get involved, follow and comment on social media.
So invite them to your own community events has been cool. This is we part of what we do also is we have relationships with the Chabads and the synagogues in the county. And so we try to remind them, like, when a community event is coming up, maybe you're having like the American holiday Thanksgiving, maybe you're having an event for that at your shul, invite elected leaders to come to that, so that they can see what the community is like. Because right now there's so much garbage being put into the world about the Jewish community. Have those people get to know the community, find out we're not actually, using Gentile blood for matzah and whatever, you know, right? But like I saw a little picture of this. We met with a new rabbi who came into one of the shuls in this county, and suggested to him, they were having an event coming up at their shul, here's an elected leader that it would be nice to have at this upcoming event. He reached out to her, invited her. She wasn't able to make it. But the following week, I was at an event where this mayor was, and I spoke to her, and she didn't know about that I had made that connection with him, but she said to me very proudly, such and such synagogue invited me to this. And she looked so proud. And she was like, I was really sad
Oh,
to miss it. But it was like she had been touched that they had reached out to her, which was real. And
oh,
I should say, she's not Jewish.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
not, yeah. So that was really nice to see.
That is so nice.